Back in 1997, Squaresoft released an absolutely groundbreaking title for the Sony PlayStation 1, but the only issue is it was limited by that time's hardware and the PlayStation's capabilities, despite it being one of the most powerful consoles around at the time. Final Fantasy VII envisioned a world with immense characters and an absolutely stunning story that grips you from beginning to end. But recently, Square decided to push the button and give the game a remake that fans have been desiring for so long now. But how well does it hold up to the original? Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is 8-Bit Preston and welcome to Honest Reviews, the first episode of Season 3, the show where I cut the bullshit and I give you my honest opinions of a game. Now, this one's going to be a little bit hard for me to stay honest with because Final Fantasy VII, as you may know, is my favourite game of all time, and to see it again in this light is absolutely fucking incredible. And I was tearing up from the moment the logo appeared on the screen. That's how much, well, I wouldn't call it nostalgia, but that's how much love I have for this game, as I haven't even known this game for that long, so I wouldn't call it nostalgia. But anyways, yeah, this game... from start to end, it was exactly as I was expecting. It was a fresh take on the story of Final Fantasy VII. The characters and the world was phenomenal. The soundtrack was breathtaking all the way through, and it was just a nice surprise. It was a good addition to 2020 for once. You know, with all the stuff that's going on in the world at the moment, you know, with pandemics, etc. This is exactly what we needed. And if you haven't picked this game up before or played the original, you have to get this game. And I'm going to go and explain why as we speak. So, before we carry on, there will be spoilers towards the later ends of this video, as the intro has probably told you by now. But don't worry about any spoilers right now. There will be a spoiler warning when they're about to come into place, and I will talk about everything spoiler related at that section of the video, and I will leave a timestamp to skip to if you want to see the score that I'm going to give this game. So without further ado, grab onto your Buster Swords and let us begin the review of Final Fantasy VII Remake. The story for the most part does remain unchanged, as all the key points are still here that people will recognise in a heartbeat, but we need to not forget to mention that this game does something absolutely sporadical in the term of remake, and instead it's more of a reimagining of everything, including the narrative. Now what I mean by this is that this game introduces so many new characters, so many new different locations, and I mean so many different plot points to the point where it may as well not even be called remake. But yes, I understand reimagining doesn't sound as cool or as interesting as remake. You gotta market your game somehow. But to me, this isn't a problem whatsoever. Now, I do know that the change in story has had a lot of people angry, and I have seen many angry fans online, on Twitter, you know, YouTube, etc., complaining about how they don't like what they've done with the narrative. But I'm actually a fan of the new story, believe it or not. Now, while yes, I do understand the new whispers are very meta in how they are, you know, told to be, but I honestly don't mind it. With all the new content and everything else like that, this is absolutely incredible, and it's a great expansion to the original story, which I already think is one of the best pieces of, well, I'd call it literature. It's one of the best pieces of literature ever written, and this has just made it even better in my opinion. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me here, but this is my review. If you want to disagree with me, then you can say it in the comments section, but please be nice, because when I made that rant about journalists' opinions on this game, the comments section went fucking nuts at me for giving this game such high regards, despite only being 3 hours into it. And now that I've finished the game twice, I can say that my opinions have not, well, they have changed, but they aren't worse, they are much higher. This game just blew me out of the water, especially in its story, with the way everything's been changed and all the new stuff, and how it all links back together in the end. It's incredible. So, for the most part, this new narrative isn't bad. It's actually pretty good. But if you're a hardcore fan of the original and you are also a purist, so you don't like things being changed, you may find this story a little bit iffy in some places, and you might get a little bit triggered by these changes. But as someone who is, I'm stumbling. I'm a hardcore fan of the original, don't get me wrong, but I don't mind things being changed, because this is what we were told the remake was going to do all along. So for the people complaining about the remake being different, were you not listening to everything that Nomura and Kitase have been telling us for the past 3 years nearly? Like, it's evident that they're going to change things, and they did change things, so why are we complaining? Anyways, getting sidetracked. The new narrative is great, it's nothing bad. There are some silly elements in it, there are some meta elements in it, but everything gets wrapped up, and this again is only part one of however many parts this game series is going to be. And as part 1, I think it sets up everything very, very nicely. So I have no complaints about the narrative whatsoever. Now, in my opinion, this is probably going to be the thing that captures most people's interest about Final Fantasy VII Remake, that being the gameplay. Because a lot of people can expect the same story from the original, if they've played the original, that is. But if you're new to this franchise, or this game series in general, and you have no idea what to expect from Final Fantasy, and you prefer gameplay over story, you're going to want to know, how this game plays, how it feels, is it fun? And I can tell you now, this is probably the most fun RPG I've ever played. And as you know, I recently 100%ed Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, and that game was absolutely incredible. I genuinely enjoyed it, despite how unfleshed out it was in some places. But the gameplay here outranks that in millions of ways, because Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was just mash square to win, and this is what people are saying this game is, mash square to win. But it is not. The combat system in this game is much more deep and advanced than just mashing square. And if you don't take the time to appreciate that and learn it, you're going to get bored very quickly. So instead of jumping into the game and mashing square or triangle and hoping for the best, look at what you're being told and look at what's being presented and what's at hand. Use your abilities, use magic, use what you have, and you're going to have a lot of fun, and you're going to realise how strategic this game really is. Because you make one wrong move in terms of using magic or whatnot, you're going to get cornered, or you're going to get pinned, etc., and you're going to lose a lot of health and potentially fall unconscious. So there is a lot to take in with the combat, especially when it comes to using the different types of weapons that you will acquire throughout the game. As in this game, each weapon is durable throughout the entirety, which I am more than happy about, because having a full Buster Sword run in this game is more than fun. As you play, gather SP, level up, and get a buff Buster Sword by the end that is just as good as the Hard Edge in terms of its strength. But at the same time, using different weapons, there is no obligations to do so at any point in the game, unless you want to go for 100% completion. Now, in terms of where I am in, when it comes to completion, I am nearly there. I just have a few more trophies to collect, and then I've done it. And like I mentioned earlier, I've done 2 full playthroughs of this game, one on normal mode and again on hard mode, which you unlock after beating the campaign. And I will tell you this now, the game is not very easy. So well, if you play on easy mode, it is beyond easy, because I'm halfway through a easy mode playthrough as well, and it is really easy. But I haven't played on classic mode yet, so I wouldn't know how to describe that to you. But from what I've heard from most people, it's not the best thing in the world. So I don't know if I'm going to give it a chance or not. But then again, I probably will do, because this game is just beyond fun. Anyways, like I was saying, I've done 2 full playthroughs, and the game just didn't lose me at any point throughout. And you could say that's because you've played the original, you love these characters, blah blah blah. But I know someone who hasn't played the original, and they're about halfway through the campaign at the moment, and they're loving it just as much as I am, because the character building in this game is incredible, and I'm going to get onto that in just a moment. But back to the gameplay, there's just so much to take in, and there's so much to do, and as you get further through the game, you're going to feel like the game does so much at the start to make you feel really good from the early points, which will encourage you to keep playing. And the further you get into the game, the more you're going to unlock, the more you're going to realise, and the more fun you're going to have with all your different abilities, etc. And it's just a great time all the way through. I didn't get bored of the combat at any point. In terms of the way this game is presented, I've never seen a game presented in such a fantastic and clean manner. Now, there are people all over the internet screaming about some of the low textured doors or the low poly NPCs, but is that really an issue? Like, just put that aside for one moment, look at the world that's being built and look at the characters that are in front of you. Don't focus on a slightly mistextured object because it's pissing you off. Look at Grand Theft Auto 5, for example. How many times have you experienced texture bugs or low poly things in that game? It's absurd. Now, while yes, it was a PS3 title originally, and now obviously it was ported to the PlayStation 4 in 2015, I believe it was. It was quite a while ago now, over half a decade. But like, it's not the point. This game is presented in such a fantastic manner in terms of its visuals, its characters, its world, and its soundtrack, especially its soundtrack. This has got to be my favourite game soundtrack of all time. It's absolutely phenomenal. like just the effort that went into it alone is outstanding. Every single track has at least 2 or more different arrangements depending on the circumstance, whether like it's because the soundtrack's dynamic. So one moment you could start a battle and the battle theme plays, but because there's more battles ahead as you're running, a slightly less frantic and simmered down version of the battle theme continues to play in the background until you get to another battle which plays a regular battle theme continuing from that point. It's incredible the way the soundtrack is, it works in this game. It's phenomenal. In terms of the rest, when it comes to characters, I've never seen characters presented or developed in such a way like this in a video game ever, and that's accounting for other Final Fantasy titles as well as the original. It's just absolutely incredible the way that you get to know these characters, and it makes the eventual fates of some of these characters all the more devastating towards the end. My favourite has to be Barret, because as you start the game, Barret just seems like one of those edgy guys who's a bit of an asshole to everyone, but as you keep playing the game and Barret gets more comfortable around characters such as Cloud, and you see him interact with Tifa, Marlene, and then Avalanche themselves, you just can see that he's not a bad guy at all, and he's actually doing this for the planet and not himself or anything else like that. Barret is one of the most well-handled characters I've ever seen. As is Cloud, he's no longer just a mopey shithead. Like at the start, yeah, he's a bit of an arsehole to be honest, but the further you go through the game, the longer you play for, Cloud becomes such a he's not as nice as, let's say, Zack, but he's still an incredible character to follow along on this journey, and it's amazing to see how everyone is developed. And in terms of the world, Midgar is incredible. It feels alive. It feels, I'm going to use this example again, it feels more alive than GTA 5 does, because GTA 5, everyone just swears and pulls out guns and uses racial slurs for the sake of using racial slurs, because it's a Rockstar game, and the way they present their worlds is just over-exaggerated essentially. And in terms of their other games, let's say Red Dead Redemption 2, that one feels realistic because it is based off of a realistic, time period, and everything does feel natural in that game. But in this game, despite the fantasy setting, the very clear fantasy setting, even if you're not reading that from the title, it's just phenomenal how real Midgar feels, with all of its inhabitants having their own unique voice lines and their own unique personalities. Each sector of Midgar as well looking incredible, as well as having their own different features. The Marco reactors as well, the way that everything is it just all comes together so nicely, and you feel like you're actually in Midgar. I have never finished a game and felt like this towards the game's world before. Like, I felt like I was in Midgar throughout the duration of both my playthroughs, and it was a phenomenal experience. Alright, it's that time. Spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled for this game, skip to the time you see on screen now to see my final score for the game and the final chapter of this review. So you have been warned, you don't want any spoilers or anything like that, because trust me, these are major spoilers that will take away all the surprises and everything that you want to keep to yourself throughout the game. You really do not want to spoil this for yourself if you haven't played it yet. But if you're alright with spoilers and you've played the game, etc., feel free to continue watching. If you haven't, skip to the time period on the screen now. You have been warned. This is going to be the most divisive section for me to make, as the spoiler stuff I'm about to talk about was either fantastic or it was very, very depressing for me to see. So we'll start off with some of the more obvious spoiler things, the Sector 7 plate collapse. This for me was the best moment in the game. Everything from the emotions it built to the eventual final CGI cutscene, which was breathtaking to watch, by the way. It just shows how much further we've come since Advent Children. It's incredible. But at the same time, I really have to say one small gripe: the fate of Avalanche. Now, yes, Biggs does eventually recover and Wedge does survive, but Jesse does permanently die still. That is still a thing, whereas in the original, all 3 members died. Now, that is the gripe I have with this scene. I would have preferred everyone to stay dead personally, because, well, yes, I'm obviously fine with change. The fate for Avalanche was probably the best thing to do going forward. Now, having Wedge survive was semi-okay with me, because the way that they would have presented his death, they would have done him dirty, as he just got killed by the collapsing plate, whereas Jesse and Biggs got killed in action. And may I just say, when I first started to climb the tower and I saw Biggs there dying, I just flooded into fucking tears. I couldn't see through my glasses or anything, so I had to give myself a minute to, you know, clean my face. I came back to the game, and then I climb a few more stories, and I see the same thing happening with Jesse, and I just start bawling in tears again. This scene absolutely fucking broke me, and I had to take a break after. Like, this is I never ever take breaks from games, but the collapse of the plate broke me so much I had to take a break for at least half an hour to calm myself down until I could eventually keep playing. I have not cried like that since Avengers Endgame, and that was last year. So yes, this game, the way it heightens your emotions and also develops its characters, is fucking fantastic, because the original game did not have that effect on me during Avalanche's original death. So, you know, that just shows you that this scene was an improvement. And yes, like I said, it is my favourite scene, not only because of the visual spectacle it is, but also how tense it is, how much you want to just destroy Reno and Rude at the top of the tower, and just the emotions it builds. It's fucking incredible. Anyways, moving on to some more spoiler stuff. The ending. Oh boy. Right, so the ending was very divisive among many people, as I've read, and it is very, very confusing, because out of nowhere during the final fight against this massive spirit thing, which we are eventually revealed to be Destiny by Nanaki, we are basically told we're fighting our own destiny. So what that means, what I think it means, is we are fighting what is the original game's event, and this game is trying to avoid that happening in this reality, let's say. So it's essentially an alternate reality to the original game, and we're fighting against the original game's events to make these ones fall down. It is very meta, and it is kind of pathetic, in all honesty, as a way to retell the story. I would have been fine with them just retelling it in a different light, but it's fine. It adds for an exciting new boss fight, as well as an incredible showdown with Sephiroth. But during this, we get some flash forwards to Advent Children cutscenes, which is really weird. Because we've seen that, the starting to Advent Children, which is Nanaki running, the Advent Children scene where Cloud jumps at Sephiroth using the wrong Buster Sword, mind you. We also see segments of Aerith's death, but not all of it. It's just like little flashes, and I thought that was just a silly thing to do, really, especially when we first meet her in the slums, because it does that there as well, and it's just silly. I don't like how they did that. But other than that, we get an appearance from Zack Ferret during this section, my favourite video game character of all time. And I was not happy. I was so frustrated. Now, yes, when he came on screen, I began crying, because obviously I fucking love Zack. And, you know, just what happened to him in the original game, etc. But the way he looks, I think I've just seen him too much in Crisis Core, because in this game he looks really, really puffy. And he looks nothing like what he looked like in Crisis Core. Crisis Core, he does look old and mature, but at the same time he has this childlike look to him, which just makes him so presentable and adorable to look at. And his voice in Crisis Core was a perfect mix of mature and also childlike as well, but in this game he's just so squeaky. It sounds like someone's squeezing his right testicle the whole time, and I hate that. I just hate what they've done with Zack in this game. And they did recreate the Crisis Core cutscene where Zack approaches the Shinra Armada that ambushes him, which I thought was pretty cool, but the delivery from the new voice actor was just disgusting. Now, yes, I understand it's cool to have someone from Big Bang Theory voice one of the best characters of all time, but no, he's just not done it. I'll give him some time, and if he doesn't impress me by part 2, they've officially butchered Zack. I just don't like how they've done that. But, well, like I did say, there are alternate timelines, I think anyway, or maybe we just didn't get to see it in this game, but Zack survives that fight with Shinra. Like, in Crisis Core, he was shot dead on the spot, and it was one of the first times I've bored like a bitch since Endgame as well. But in this game, they look to be going with the original way that Zack died, which was dragging Cloud towards Midgard, but he gets ambushed and shot dead on that spot instead of, being shot by the Armada and Cloud crawling over to him to receive the Buster Sword, etc. Which I'd have no problem with, but at the same time, if you're going to do Crisis Core, at least do it right, and also give Zack some proper lines and proper deliveries. But yeah, I was just unimpressed by the whole thing with Zack. But in terms of the rest of the spoilers, the only one I can really give is just the Sector 7 plate collapse, really, or the wall market scene. Everything remains untouched and everything remains incredible or better, apart from the scenes where they show Zack. The moment we've all been waiting for, the verdict. My thoughts on the remake as a whole. Did it disappoint me? Did I love it? Did I hate it? Do I hold it in high regards? The honest truth is it was fucking incredible. Just to say it very modestly. Words cannot describe the absolute passion that the developers put into this title. It was incredible from beginning to end. The soundtrack, the characters, the dialogue, the world, the missions. It was a spectacle. Absolutely incredible and such an improvement upon what the original did in Midgar. It took Midgar and it made it its own place and it made it its own game. The main story took me 35 hours and again at 42 on hard mode, and that was completing all side quests, which you are not obliged to do at all, but if you do, you unlock more story, you unlock possibilities for achievements, and you also unlock different scenarios. So they are worth doing and they do not feel tedious whatsoever. It is a joy to do. So the total playtime for this game before making this review was 77 hours, and I had almost 100%ed it. So, with that being said, final score for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1. I'm going to give Final Fantasy VII Remake a 9.5 out of 10. Simply because the game did fall short on its ending and a few other things that I mentioned in the spoiler section. But then again, it's too quickly to judge this as an entire game. While yes, this was made to be its own standalone game, it's impossible to compare it now to the original, because the original is the entirety of Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is just... is the entirety of Final Fantasy VII. This is just Midgar. So, comparing it to the original now would be pointless, as it is not a finished project. But this entry is most certainly finished, and it most certainly left me on the edge of my seat, waiting for the next part. Final Fantasy VII Remake is so far my game of the year, and I hope it remains. Thank you all for watching my review of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I highly recommend you guys pick this game up. Probably the best thing to happen in 2020 so far. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video of mine. Take care, and peace out.